Thank you for joining us. Me and Elohim. Elohim and me. Elohim and I. For all you English speakers out there. And if you don't speak English, this is going to be a really hard Bible study because that's the language that we're doing this in. Father Yahweh, hear our prayer. Praise Yahweh. Glorious and mighty you are. Father Yahweh, I love you. I know we've got new viewers out there today. And let your word be spoken to them. Let everything that you need come from the reading of your word. Use me to read your word. Use me to speak your word. Use me to be your word, to shine my light, to shine my light. Use me, Father, to show other people what they need to know about you and let them absorb and take in what they need to know and have their eyes be open and their ears open as well, and that we all love each other. Father Yahweh, you are the guiding force in this and the most important thing in all of this. Combining factor and the source of the light, the battery for all of this. In Yeshua's name, amen. Okay. So, yes, I have coffee today. Yes, I'm in purple again. That is a pillow because sometimes I sleep on my couch because it's comfortable. Don't get distracted by it here. Let's see if we can get it out of camera angle. Slightly. It's a big pillow. And then that's orange. Because it's orange. Because orange goes good with purple. Today we are in 2 Chronicles 34 to 36 and John 19. We will finish 2 Chronicles today on day 161. Got coffee, got water. Y'all got your coffee and your water. Elohim provides everything that we need. He's so great. He does things that we don't know, and we just have to be willing to accept them when they come to us. We don't even really have to go and seek them out and get them. And also, I wish that I could show you the way that I have the camera set up, the angle, but I like this angle. I like the phone holder. So thanks Yahweh, but thanks to my uncle for giving it to me. 2 Chronicles 34. Yoshiyahu was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and walked in the ways of his father Dawid, and did not turn aside right or left. And in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he began to seek the Elohim of his father, and in the 12th year he began to cleanse Yehudah. And Jerusalem from the high places, and the Asherim, and the carved images, and the molded images. And they broke down the slaughter places of the Baals in his presence, and the sun pillars which were above them he cut down. And the Asherim, and the carved images, and the molded images he smashed, and ground them up, and strewed it on the surface of the burial sites of those who had slaughtered to them. And he burned the bones of the priests on their slaughter places, and cleansed Yehudah and Jerusalem. And in the cities of Manasseh and Ephraim and Shimon, as far as Naphtali, in their ruins all around. And he broke down the slaughter places in the Asherim, and ground the carved images into dust, and cut down all the sun pillars throughout all the land of Israel, and returned to Jerusalem. And in the 18th year of his reign, when he had cleansed the land and the house, he sent Shaphan, son of Atzaliahu, and Maaseyahu, the head of the city, and Yoah, son of Yoahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of Yahweh his Elohim. And they went to Hilkiyahu, the high priest, And they gave the silver that was brought into the house of Elohim, which the Levites who kept the doors had gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, and from all the remnant of Israel, and from all Yehuda and Benjamin, and which they had brought back to Jerusalem, and they gave it to the hand of the workmen, those appointed over the house of Yahuwah. And they gave it to the workmen who worked in the house of Yahuwah to repair and strengthen the house. And they gave it to the craftsmen and to the builders to buy hewn stone and timber for couplings and for beams for the houses which the sovereigns of Yehuda had destroyed. And the men did the work trustworthily. And over them they were appointed Yahath and Obed-Yahu, the Levites, of the sons of Merari, and Zechariah and Meshulam, of the sons of the Kehathites, to oversee, and of the Levites, all of whom who were skilled in instruments of song, and over the burden bearers, and overseers of all who did work in any kind of service, and of the Levites who were scribes and officers and gatekeepers. And when they brought out the silver that was brought into the house of Yahuwah, Hilkiyahu the priest found the book of the Torah of Yahuwah given by Moshe. Then Hilkiyahu responded and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the Torah in the house of Yahuwah. And Hilkiyahu gave the book to Shaphan. And Shaphan brought the book to the sovereign, and brought the sovereign word, saying, All that has been given into the hand of the servants they are doing. Your servants they are doing. And they have poured out the silver that was found in the house of Yahuwah, and have given it into the hand of those appointed on the workmen. And Shaphan the scribe informed the sovereign, saying, Hilkiyahu the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the sovereign. And it came to be, when the sovereign heard the words of the Torah, that he tore his garments. And the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, and Abdon, son of Micah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah, a servant of the sovereign, saying, Go, inquire of Yahuwah for me, and for him who is left in Israel and in Yehuda, concerning the words of the book that is found. For great is the wrath of Yahuwah that is poured out on us, because our fathers have not guarded the word of Yahuwah, to do according to all that is written in this book. Then Hilkiyahu and those of the sovereign went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shalom, son of Tokath, son of Hazra, keeper of the wardrobe, who was dwelling in Jerusalem in the second quarter, and they spoke to her about this. And she said to them, Thus said Yahuwah, Elohim of Israel, say to the man who sent you to me, Thus said Yahuwah, See, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, all the curses that are written in the book which they have read before the sovereign of Yehuda, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other mighty ones to provoke me with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath is poured out on this place and is not quenched. And to the sovereign of Yehuda, who sent you to inquire of Yahuwah, say this to him, Thus said Yahuwah, Elohim of Israel, whose words you have heard, because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before Elohim when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, and you humbled yourself before me, and you tore your garments and wept before me, I also have heard, declares Yahuwah. See, I am gathering you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your burial site in peace, so that your eyes would not see all the evil that I am bringing on this place and its inhabitants. So they brought back word to the sovereign. And the sovereign sent and gathered all the elders of Yehuda in Jerusalem. And the sovereign went up to the house of Yahuwah with all the men of Yehuda and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and the Levites, and all the people, both great and small. And he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which had been found in the house of Yahuwah. And the sovereign stood in his place and made a covenant before Yahuwah to follow Yahuwah and to guard his commands and his witnesses and his laws with all his heart and all his being, to do the words of the covenant that were written in this book. And he made stand all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of Elohim, the Elohim of their fathers. And Yoshiyahu removed all the abominations from all the lands that belonged to the children of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel diligently serve Yahuwah their Elohim all his days. They did not turn away from following Yahuwah Elohim of their fathers. That is a longer chapter for Chronicles, and there's a lot of reading today, so gonna be getting comfortable. Gonna be about 2 hours. You know, the flight will take off right on time. Okay. Yoshiyahu, those of you who have been following me from the beginning, 2 Kings 24-25 was a similar chapter, and I remember this as much. Like, we read all 2 Kings together. No, it wasn't 24. We read all 2 Kings together. It was 22. But this really stuck out because of the fact that they do the Pesach, and we'll get more into the Pesach in the next chapter, 35. But there's a second reference there if anybody needs it. 2 Kings 22 and some 23. And again, Chronicles and Kings, they kind of run, like they're kind of like second witness to each other. Yoshiyahu was 8 years old when he began to reign, a young king, and he reigned 31 years. And he did right in the eyes of Yahuwah, and walked in the ways of his father Dawid, and did not turn aside. In the 8th year of his reign, he was still young. He began to seek the Elohim of his father Dawid. And in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Yehuda and Jerusalem from the high places. So at 16 years old, this kid starts seeking God. And, you know, we don't really have a reason why, but he walked in the ways of his father and did not turn aside right or left. And in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he began to seek the Elohim of his father Dawid. So the way that I'm picturing this is he's doing all the things of his father Dawid. He gets all these blessings. He does the right, you know, from 8 to 16, which is just, I mean, like, tough years as far as body change and finding your path and doing right. And I can only imagine being a king at 8 years old. Be awesome. And 16, he really comes into himself and he starts seeking something bigger. He said, there's got to be more than all of this. And in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Yehuda and Jerusalem from the high places and the Asherim and the carved images and the molded images. And he just starts doing this. Like, we come to find out later in the chapter, doesn't know the Torah. He's never heard the Torah, and Shaphan reads the Torah to him, and that's his introduction to it. So he doesn't know Yahuwah. He knows of the house of Yahuwah, but he doesn't actually understand all of this. And we don't have exactly what he knew or what he was told or what he was taught, you know. But, again, somebody else was doing this too. And it's just like Hezekiah, I think. Like where he repairs, he just kind of gets the urge to start repairing the house of Yahuwah. In the first year of his reign, chapter 29, verse 3, in the first year of his reign, in the first new moon, he opened the doors of the house of Yahuwah and repaired them, and brought in priests and Levites and gathered them in the open place to the east. So this man's just, like, I gave this description when we did 29, but, like, I was picturing him in this, like, overgrown, like, vines all over this building, and he opens up the doors, and he feels the Spirit, and he's like, we have to fix this. We've done wrong here. And so I'm imagining Yoshiyahu. I'm seeing Yoshiyahu do the same thing. Just like, this is wrong. This is abominable. You know when you walk into a room and you're like, there's evil here? That's what Yoshiyahu saw when he walked upon the high places, the asherim, the carved images, the molded images, which people wear around their neck sometimes nowadays in 2024. Verse 4, and they broke down the slaughter places of the Baals in his presence, and the sun pillars, anybody got an east-facing church? Which were above them he cut down, and the asherim, steeples on top of the church, and the carved images, crosses behind the podium, and the molded images, crucifixes around the neck. He smashed and ground them up, and strewed it on the surface of the burial sites of those who had slaughtered to them. And he burned the bones of the priests on their slaughter places, and cleansed Yehuda and Jerusalem, and in the cities of Manasseh, and Ephraim and Shimon, as far as Naphtali, in their ruins all around. So he goes to war with anybody who is slaughtering. He burned the bones of the priests on their slaughter places. He is full-blown going to war with this concept of these false gods. 2 Kings 23:16. I'm looking for context to verse 5 of 2 Chronicles 34. And he burned the bones of the priests on their slaughter places and cleansed Yehuda and Jerusalem. 2 Kings 23:16. Then Yoshiyahu turned and saw the burial sites that were there on the mountain. And he sent and took the bones out of the burial sites and burned them on the slaughter places and defiled it according to the word of Yahweh, which the man of Elohim proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. And he said, "What tombstone is this that I see?" And the men of the city said to him, "It is the burial site of the man of Elohim who came from Yehuda and proclaimed these matters which you have done against the slaughter place of Bethel." And he said, "Let him alone, let no one move his bones." So they left his bones alone with the bones of the prophet who came from Shomeron. So he burns the bones of the priests, and then there's a certain prophet that is there separately. There's another tombstone that he asks about, and they go, "No, this is a man of God." He broke down the slaughter places and the asherim and ground the carved images into dust and cut down all the slaughter places throughout all the land of Israel, then returned to Jerusalem. Exodus 34, they grind the molded calf into dust, and then they have to eat it. I think, is it Moses makes them eat it? Oh, it's 32. Sorry. I've had that wrong for quite a bit. Exodus 32. Exodus 32:20, and he, Moses, we see from 32:19. Sorry, 32:19. And it came to be, as soon as he came near the camp, that he saw the calf and the and the dancing, and Moshe's displeasure burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hand and broke them at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf which they had made and burned it in the fire and ground it into powder and scattered it on the face of the water and made the children of Israel drink it. Yeah. The golden calf. We're not going to get into why, but ground it into powder, mixed it in the water, and made the children of Israel drink it. And so in the 18th year, when he had cleansed the land and the house, he sent Shaphan, son of Atzaliahu, and Maaseyahu, the head of the city, and Yoah, son of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of YHWH his Elohim. He starts repairing it again. And they went to Hilkiyahu, the high priest, and they gave the silver that was brought into the house of Elohim, which the Levites who kept the doors, and gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, and from all the remnant of Israel, and from all Yehudah and Benjamin, and which they had brought back to Jerusalem, and they gave it to the hand of the workmen, those appointed over the house of YHWH, and they gave it to the workmen who worked in the house of YHWH to repair and strengthen the house. Pretty straightforward. They gave it to the craftsmen and to the builders to buy hewn stone and timber for couplings and for beams for the house, which the sovereigns of Yehudah had destroyed. Couplings and beams. This is no small work. This isn't the doors needed some silver refinement. These are beams and this is like, I don't know if you've all built houses, but I mean, the beams are the structures that hold the house up and together, and it wasn't like they had drywall back in the day. So they think like a barn, you've got the posts and then beams, and the couplers are the V's that would have held the posts in place held the beams in place on the posts, which you can't see. So we've got beams, posts, couplers. So this is no small work that needs to be done. This is structural damage, which the sovereigns of Yehudah had destroyed. So somebody was in there banging up the integrity of this structure. Verse 12, and the men did the work trustworthily, which we've seen over and over and over as a qualifier, and over them were appointed Yahath and Obadiah, the Levites, and the sons of Merari, and Zechariah, and Meshulam of the sons of the Kehathites to oversee, and the Levites, all of whom were skilled in the instrument of song. So they're just rapping along. And over the burden bearers and overseers of all who did work in any kind of service, and the Levites were scribes and officers and gatekeepers. And when they brought out the silver that was brought into the house of YHWH, Hilkiyahu the priest found the book of the Torah of YHWH given by Moshe. We're going to see here too, this becomes called the Book of the Covenant, so you would say this is the covenant, right? Like the Torah would be the covenant. They're synonymous, right? And you also would hear people say, well, we're under the new covenant, and that was the old covenant. But how many covenants are made in this? Is there only one covenant? Does the covenant come Deuteronomy 34:13, which doesn't exist? Is there a covenant made there? No, the covenant is in Exodus. Before we even get the Levitical law is when the Mosaic covenant is made. The people say, and we shall do all that YHWH tells us to do. But the first covenant is, first of all, the Adamic covenant, be fruitful and multiply. It's the first command given, and rule and subdue the earth. So we've got the Adamic covenant, and then in between we've got things like the Abrahamic covenant, circumcision, the Noahic covenant with the rainbow, obviously the Mosaic covenant. Does he actually make a covenant with Yaakov? As I have promised your fathers. We're going to read through 28:12. Genesis 28:12. Genesis 28:10. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went to Haran, and went toward Haran, and he came upon a place and stopped over for the night, for the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed and saw a ladder set up on the earth, and its top reached to the heavens, and saw messengers of Elohim going up and coming down on it. And see, Yahweh stood above it and said, I am Yahweh Elohim of Abraham your father, and the Elohim of Yitzchak. The land on which you are lying, I give it to you and your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall break forth to the west and to the east, and to the north and the south, and all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed. And see, I am with you, and shall guard you wherever you go, and shall bring you back to this land. For I am not going to leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. And Jacob awoke from his sleep, and said, Truly Yahweh is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid, and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of Elohim, and this is the gate of the heavens. And Jacob rose early in the morning, and took the stone that he had put at his head, set it up as a standing column, and poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Beth-El. However, the name of that city had been Luz previously. And Jacob made a vow, saying, See, Elohim is with me, and has kept me in this way that I am going, and has given me bread to eat and a garment to put on, when I have returned to my father's house in peace. And Yahweh has been my Elohim. Then this stone which I have set as a standing column shall be Elohim's house. And of all that you give me, I shall certainly give a tenth to you. That's from Genesis 14. Genesis 14:20, and he blessed the Most High El who has delivered, and blessed be the Most High El who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him a tenth of all. So Abraham gives a tenth to Melchizedek in Genesis 14, and then we see it again. Jacob doing it in Genesis 28, and we go on to, I want to go through Genesis 32. And what's going on here is that Jacob is coming to a point where he's going to have to face Esau, who is out to kill him, and he's worried about it. And Esau he's got this plan basically where Jacob sends gifts to Esau. Love your enemy. Anybody ever seen that? He sends gifts to Esau, and I'll ruin the story, but Esau accepts these gifts and basically, forgives Jacob. But what I'm looking at here, we're still looking for if there's an actual covenant made. But we're going to start in Genesis 32:22. And he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford of Yabbok. And he took them and sent them over the stream and sent over what he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man, capital M man, wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he did not overcome him, that the man of Elohim did not overcome Jacob, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. So all he's got to do is poke. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I am not letting you go until you have blessed me. So this guy's trying to get away from Jacob at this point, and Jacob's like, nah. So he asked him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name is no longer Jacob, but Yisrael, because you have striven with Elohim and with men and have overcome. That's what Yisrael means, to strive with Elohim and with men and to overcome. Strives with Elohim and overcomes. And Jacob asked him, saying, please let me know your name. And he said, why do you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen the Elohim face to face, and my life is preserved. Which we know from Genesis, or from Exodus, I think that is 34 or 35. Exodus 33. Moses says, please show me your esteem. In verse 18. And he said, I shall cause all my goodness to pass before you, and I shall proclaim the name of Yahweh before you. And I shall favor him whom I favor, and shall have compassion on him who I have compassion. But he said, you are unable to see my face, for no man does see me and live. So who is this man of Elohim? It is the man of Elohim that walked the earth. Elohim made man. Do we have an answer? Yeshua HaMashiach, everybody. Yeshua! Yeah! Wow! That is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of the thigh of Jacob and the sinew of his hip. So this is not a formal covenant. I think the covenant's made with Abraham there. However, the point is that the covenants stack. All that to come back to the fact that the New Testament is a covenant in one book stacked on the other covenants, right? So you see physically the covenant of the Abrahamic covenant, the Adamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, the New Covenant, stacked. Okay. Book of the Torah of Yahweh given by Moshe. Hilkiyahu responded and said to Shaphan the scribe, I found the book of the Torah in the house of Yahweh, and Hilkiyahu gave the book to Shaphan. Shaphan brought the book to the sovereign, and brought the sovereign word, saying, all that has been given into the hand of your servants they are doing. Hey, we got this project going good, and they poured out the silver that was found in the house of Yahweh, and have given it to the hand of those appointed and the workmen. And Shaphan the scribe informed the sovereign, saying, Hilkiyahu the priest has given me a book, and Shaphan read it before the sovereign. So Shaphan reads, Hilkiyahu finds the book. Shaphan reads it to, what's this guy's name? Yoshiyahu. And it came to be when the sovereign heard the words of the Torah that he tore his garments. Shh! He's grieving. And the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu, Ahakim, which I'm not going to go into the grieving because I don't know exactly where it is, but there's Torah for the grieving and the tearing of the garments, and so we'll do that later. But just know that that's what that means. It's a sign of grief. And the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu, a Hakim, son of Shaphan, Abdon, son of Micah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Yah, a servant of the sovereign, saying, go, inquire of Yahweh for me, and for him who is left in Yisrael and in Yehudah concerning the words of the book that is found. For great is the wrath of Yahweh that is poured out on us, because our fathers have not guarded the word of Yahweh, to do according to all that is written in this book. He says, urgently, find out where we stand with Yahweh, because I need to make this right. I know the power of Yahweh. I know now the word of Yahweh and the authority of Yahweh, and I trust Yahweh and I love Yahweh. All of my my banging on the book kind of knocked this down a little bit, I think, so I'm going to just readjust there. Make sure that my hands are in frame, because that was a issue previously. I don't get the full effect of my speech. Right, the word. And Hilkiah and those sovereigns went to Huldah, the prophetess. I had a sermon today on women being prophets of Yahuwah, and the one that I could come up with was Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moses. She was a prophetess that when they get to the wilderness of... They're in the wilderness and they can't get... dwelling place... I don't think it's this far in. Not sure exactly where it is. You were a stiff-necked people. It is somewhere in Numbers, not too late. Let's see, maybe it's like real early. But basically, Miriam is a prophetess as well. Just realizing too, Numbers 6:13 says, and this is the Torah of the Nazarite. Number 6 is about the Nazarite, and when we went to, it was John somewhere, and basically, John 4 maybe, but we were talking about the meaning of the word Nazareth, and the prophecy that he would be born from Nazareth. Okay, it's John 1:46. No, it's not John 1. Matthew. Oh, we didn't even read it yet. Matthew 2:23, and he shall be called a Nazarene. We were looking for the prophecy of this, and Nazareth, Nazarene, set apart to Yah. It wasn't. He shall be called a Nazarene. Man, that just flew right over my head at that point. But now we've got it in a timely manner, which this video is not going to be, so buckle in. Because this is what I do with my life. So, and I'm looking for basically the first time that the Israelites are Meribah. It's Exodus 17. Praise Yahweh. Waters of Meribah. That is what I was looking for. But this is not the chapter that I thought it was. So we're going to just keep going with the fact that Miriam was a prophetess, and Huldah is also a prophetess, the wife of Shalom, son of Tokath, son of Hazra, keeper of the wardrobe, who was dwelling in Jerusalem in the second quarter. And they spoke to her about this. And so I just wanted to make it known that women can certainly be prophetess. I mean, even Ruth, Ezra. Women are very important to Yah. Don't discredit them. Men need to be the leaders, but to say that women can't be prophetesses is falseness. 23, and she said to them, thus said YHWH Elohim of Israel, say to the man who sent you to me, thus said YHWH. She gives them a message. And we get like 19 parenthetical quotations. Thus said YHWH, see, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, all the curses that are written in the book which they have read before the sovereign of Yehudah, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other mighty ones to provoke me with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath is poured out on this place and is not quenched. And to the sovereign of Yehudah, who sent you to inquire of YHWH, say this to him. Thus said YHWH Elohim of Israel, whose words you have heard. Because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before Elohim when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, and you humbled yourself before me, and you tore your garments and wept before me, I also have heard, declares Yahweh. See, I am gathering you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your burial site in peace, so that your eyes would not see all the evil that I am bringing on this place and its inhabitants. So they brought back word to the sovereign. So the loving commitment, the forgiving El, he is the man, YHWH himself. He's like, I'm going to punish Israel, but I'm very grateful that you are doing what you've done. You've done right in my eyes. I will not punish Israel until you're dead. You will not experience it. You will not witness it. It will not befall your eyes. It will not befall your vision. Beautiful. It's like, and because like the worst thing, like I grew up like with a lot of mafia movies and like, and they always had the don't kill the women and the kids, and then you get like, I'm pretty sure it was Haiti that was known for this, where they would basically have the fathers kill the daughters and the mothers kill the sons. And so just having that, not only having to do the action, but the witnessing of it, like, it's terribly scarring. And so, yeah. Sets Yoshiyahu apart from that, which is beautiful. 29, and the sovereign sent and gathered all the elders of Yehudah and Jerusalem, and the sovereign went up to the house of YHWH with all the men of Yehudah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and the Levites, and all the people, both great and small, and he read in the hearing all the words of the book of the covenant. That's where we get the book of the covenant, which have been found in the house of YHWH, similarly called the book of the Torah, and so we smash them together because they're synonymous, as we just found out. And the sovereign stood in his place and made a covenant. Oh, so this guy makes a covenant before YHWH to follow YHWH and to guard his commands and his witnesses and his laws with all his heart and all his being. to do the words of the covenant that were written in this book, and his laws. And he made stand all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of Elohim, the Elohim of their fathers. And Yoshiyahu removed all the abominations from the land that belonged to the children of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel diligently serve Yahweh their Elohim. All his days they did not turn away from following Yahweh Elohim of their fathers. Okay. 35. And Yoshiyahu performed a Pesach to Yahweh in Jerusalem, and they slew the Pesach on the 14th day of the first new moon. And he set the priests in their duties and strengthened them for the service of the house of Yahweh, and said to the Levites who were teaching all Israel, who were set apart to Yahweh, put the set-apart ark in the house which Shlomo, son of David, sovereign of Israel, built. It is no longer to be a burden on your shoulders. Now serve Yahweh your Elohim and his people, and prepare by the fathers' houses according to your divisions, by the writing of David, sovereign of Israel, and by the writing of Shlomo his son. And stand in the set-apart place by the divisions of the fathers' houses of your brothers, the lay people, and the portion of the father's house of the Levites. And slay the Pesach, and set yourselves apart, and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of Yahweh by the hand of Moshe. And Yoshiyahu gave the lay people lambs and young goats from the flock, all for Pesachim, for everyone present, to the number of 30,000 and 3,000 cattle. These were the sovereign's possessions. And his leaders contributed a voluntary offering to the people, to the priests and to the Levites, Hilkiah and Zechariah and Yehiel, leaders of the house of Elohim, gave to the priests for the Pesachim 2,600 and 300 cattle. And Konanyahu, his brothers, Shemayahu and Nathaniel, and Hashabyahu and Yehiel, and Yozabad, chiefs of the Levites, gave to the Levites for Pesachim 5,500 cattle. And the service was prepared, and the priests stood in their places, and the Levites in their divisions, according to the command of the sovereign. And they slew the Pesach, and the priests sprinkled out of their hands while the Levites were skinning. And they removed the ascending offerings to give them to the divisions of the fathers' houses of the lay people to bring to Yahweh, as it is written in the book of Moshe, and the same with the cattle. So they roasted the Pesach with fire according to the right ruling, and they boiled the set-apart offerings in pots and in cauldrons and in bowls, and brought them speedily to all the lay people. And afterward they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering ascending offerings and fat until night. So the Levites prepared for themselves and for the priests, the sons of Aaron. And the singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their place, according to the command of David, and Asaph, and Heman, and Yeduthan, the seer of the sovereign, and the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to leave their position, because their brothers the Levites prepared for them. And all the service of Yahweh was prepared that day, to perform the Pesach and to offer ascending offerings on the slaughter place of Yahweh, according to the command of the sovereign Yoshiyahu. And the children of Israel who were present performed the Pesach at that time, and the festival of Matzah for 7 days. There had been a Pesach performed in Israel like it since there had not been a Pesach performed in Israel like it since the days of Shemuel the prophet, and none of the sovereigns of Israel had performed such a Pesach as Yoshiyahu performed with the priests and the Levites and all Yehuda and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Yoshiyahu, this Pesach was performed. And after all this, when Yoshiyahu had prepared the house, Necho, sovereign of Mitzrayim, came up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates. And Yoshiyahu went out against him. And he sent messengers to him, saying, What have I to do with you, sovereign of Yehuda? I am not coming against you this day, but against the house with which I am fighting, for Elohim commanded me to make haste. Leave Elohim alone, who is with me, lest he destroy you. However, Yoshiyahu would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself to fight against him, and did not listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of Elohim, and came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. And the archers shot at sovereign Yoshiyahu, and the sovereign said to his servants, Take me away, for I am severely wounded. And his servants took him out of that chariot, and put him in a second chariot that he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem. And he died and was buried in one of the burial sites of his fathers. And all Yehuda and Jerusalem were mourning for Yoshiyahu. And Yirmiyahu lamented for Yoshiyahu, and to this day all the singing men and the singing women speak for Yoshiyahu in their lamentations, and made it a law in Yisrael. And see, they are written in the laments. And the rest of the acts of Yoshiyahu and his loving commitment, according to what was written in the Torah of Yahuwah, and his acts from the first to the last, see, they are written in the books of the sovereigns of Israel and Yehuda. This man's got 4 good chapters. I want to point out well, we'll do it when we get to it. So if you guys remember from 2 Kings 22, we talked about Pesach that had not been like the Pesach before. It's said here since Shemuel, and Hezekiah a couple chapters ago does the first Pesach in a long time, and this Pesach is even greater. And on the 14th day of the first new moon, so he does this one on time. Hezekiah was in the second new moon, and that was chapter 30. He gives the instructions: put the set-apart ark in the house which Shlomo, son of Dawid, sovereign of Israel, built. It is no longer to be a burden on your shoulders. Now serve Yahuwah, your Elohim, and his people. So they're protecting the ark. And prepare by the father's house according to your divisions, by the writing of Dawid, sovereign of Israel, and by the writing of Shlomo, his son. And stand in the set-apart place by the divisions of the father's houses of your brothers, the lay people. The lay people are their brothers. The portion of the father's house of the Levites, and slay the Pesach, and set yourselves apart, and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of Yahuwah by the hand of Moshe. Moses gave us the word of Yahuwah to this point. Still to this point. So, Yoshiyahu gave... This is what's interesting to me. And Yoshiyahu gave the lay people lambs and young goats from the flock. The Pesach does not have to be a lamb. Or it doesn't have to be a sheep. Exodus 12:5. Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats. It doesn't have to be a sheep. It can be a goat. And so in this context, and in most contexts, the lamb is a sheep. We even see at one point in the Gospels separating the sheep from goats, which there's agricultural theology on that I am not qualified to speak about, but I've witnessed a little bit. I was in Pennsylvania at the place with the fruit and stuff, which I never ended up showing you guys, but I have the video. The place with the fruit and stuff, they had goats and sheep, and on one side of us was goats and on the other side was sheep, and their characters were very different, but not distinguishingly enough to the point where I fully understood. People say that goats are more like a handful and sheep are very loyal, and I kind of had tame on both sides. It's my observation, and so each one is fitting for Pesach. But the important thing is Yoshiyahu gave the lay people. So these people who can't afford lambs, don't have lambs. I don't know what the economic status of Yisrael Yehuda is right now. Yoshiyahu, the sovereign, gave the lay people lambs and young goats from the flock, all for Pesachim, so that they have a Pesach slaughter for everyone present, to the number of 30,000. He takes 30,000 of his own sheep and his own goats, and he gives them to the people freely and willfully, so that they may participate and their heart may be devoted to Elohim. That is leadership. And 3,000 cattle. These were from the sovereign's possessions. These were from the sovereign's possessions. Give freely. And his leaders contributed a voluntary offering to the people, to the priests and to the Levites. Hilkiah and Zechariah and Yehiel, leaders of the house of Elohim, gave to the priests for the Pesachim 2,600 and 300 cattle. They too give. Like, this is, like we've been reading in Chronicles, and I'm so glad that we got to this. Praise Yahuwah. The people were so happy to give, as soon as the house of Yahweh was set up, people figured out what was going on. They said, you're going to tithe here. People gave, and there were heaps and heaps we saw, I believe in 32. 31. And the people are happy to give, and now the leadership is giving back to the people. Obviously, they give leadership, they give stewardship, they give righteousness, but to see the physical giving back from the human leaders, from their possessions unto the lay people for their involvement in the word of Elohim, is just beautiful. And I cannot stress how necessary enough that is. When you give a bonus to your employee, they feel so special. 9. And Konanyahu, his brothers, Shemayahu and Nathaniel, and Hashbayahu, and Yeiel, and Yozabad, Hashabayahu, and Yeiel, and Yozabad, chiefs of the Levites, gave to the Levites for Pesachim 5,500 cattle. I don't know exactly who these guys are, but they're clearly some people who are important to a degree. I remember reading that name Conan Yahoo is pretty familiar, but I don't know where it was. And they're probably some guys, some officers, they're not priests, but who knows where they were, because it seems like we'll have generations of kings and then the same priests, you know what I mean? The same priests have been around since David's time, and it's just king after, we've gone through 58 kings and one priest, but they're chiefs of the Levites. That's who they are. Who might have been set up in the time of Solomon. Now, where was this leadership? I'm not very good with these names, because they're just, there it is, 31:13. And Yehiel, and Azayahu, and Nahath, and Ashiel, and Yeremoth, and Yozabad, and Eliel, and Yishmakayu, and Mahath, and Benayahu were overseers under the hand of Konayahu, and Shemi his brother, by order of Hezekiah the sovereign, and Azaryahu the ruler of the house of Elohim. Let's go back to 12. And they brought in the contributions and the tithe and the set-apart gifts trustworthily, and Konanyahu the Levite was leader over them, and Shemi his brother was next. So they're chiefs and the Levites. And they too give. So you see the hierarchy here, right? You've got the sovereign giving 30,000 and 3,000, and then you've got his leaders giving 2,600 and 300, and then chiefs giving 5,500. And the service was prepared, and the priests stood in their places, and the Levites in their division, according to the command of the sovereign. And they slew the Pesach, and the priests sprinkled out of their hand while the Levites were skinning. And they removed the ascending offering to give them to the divisions of the fathers' houses of the lay people to bring to Yahuwah, as it is written in the book of Moshe, and the same with the cattle. They get to work. So they roasted the Pesach with fire according to the right ruling. Okay? And they boiled the set-apart offerings in pots and in cauldrons and in bowls, and brought them speedily to all the lay people. To all the lay people. Brought them speedily to all the lay people. Why is this? Because you do not leave any of it overnight. We're going to go back to Exodus 12. And this is how you eat it. Exodus 12:11. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Pesach of Yahuwah. Oh, let me start at 10. Excuse me. Well, let me start at 9. Exodus 12:9. Do not eat it raw nor boiled at all with water, but roast it in fire, its head with its legs and its inward parts. And do not leave of it until morning, and what remains of it until morning you are to burn with fire. And this is how you eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Pesach of Yahuwah. So we have fire in 9, do not leave of it until morning, and then haste in 11. And the singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their places according to the command. This is a giant party. Let's worship Yahuwah! And Yeduthan, the seer of the sovereign. Asaph and Haman and Yeduthan, the seer of the sovereign. And the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to leave their position because their brothers the Levites prepared for them. They don't have to leave their position. And they do need to be gatekeepers at each gate, because you eat this in haste with your loins girded. This is like ready to go. This is the night before they leave. This is also the night of watches. You know, like literally. Let's go there too. I mean, that is just, they are doing this. This is, all of this was not in 2 Kings 22. But, and I shall, let's go to 12. And I shall pass through the land of Mitzrayim on that night, and shall strike all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both man and beast, and on all the mighty ones of Mitzrayim I shall execute judgment. I am Yahuwah. And the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Mitzrayim. And this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall celebrate it as a festival to Yahuwah throughout your generations. Celebrate it as a festival, an everlasting law. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause your sourdough to cease from your houses. For whoever eats leaven from that day until the 7th day, that being shall be cut off from Israel. And on the first day is a set-apart gathering, and on the 7th day you have a set-apart gathering. No work at all is done on them. Only that which is eaten by every being, that alone is prepared by you. And you shall guard the festival of Matzah, for this same day I brought your divisions out of the land of Mitzrayim, and you shall guard this day throughout your generations, an everlasting law. In the first month, on the 14th day of the new moon, in the evening, you shall eat the unleavened bread until the 21st day of the new moon in the evening. For 7 days no sourdough is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. Do not eat that which is leavened in all your dwellings. You are to eat unleavened bread. And Moshe called for all the leaders of Israel and said to them, go out and take lambs for yourselves according to your clans, and slay the Pesach. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. And you, none of you, shall go out of the door of his house until morning. And Yahweh shall pass on to smite the Mitzrites, and shall see the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, and Yahweh shall pass over the door, and not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And you shall guard this word as law for you and your sons forever. Then it shall be when you come to the land which Yahweh gives you, as he promised, that you shall guard this service. And it shall be when your children say to you, what does this service mean to you? Then you shall say, it is the Pesach slaughtering of Yahweh, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Mitzrayim, when he smote the Mitzrites and delivered our households. And the people bowed their heads and did obeisance. And the children of Israel went away and did so as Yahweh had commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. And it came to be at midnight that Yahweh struck all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Mitzrites, and there was a cry in Mitzrayim, for there was not a house where there was not a dead one. And he called for Moshe and Aaron by night, and said, arise, go out from the midst of my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go serve Yahweh as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds, as you have said, and go. Then you shall bless me too. And the Mitzrites were strong on the people to hasten to send them away out of the land, for they said, we are all dying. So, yeah. Should have started at the beginning. But we'll continue to read the beginning in just a second. But that is, so this is an overnight thing. And basically, they're rising in the middle of the night to get the children of Israel out. That is why all of this is done like overnight. And you shall eat it between the evenings. Top of chapter 12. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, this new moon is the beginning of the new moons for you. It is the first new moon of the year for you. Back to 2 Chronicles 35:16. And all the service of Yahweh was prepared that day to perform the Pesach, and to offer ascending offerings on the slaughter place of Yahweh, according to the command of sovereign Yoshiyahu. And the children of Israel who were present performed the Pesach at that time in the festival of Matzah for 7 days, which we just read about in the back half of 12. There had not been a Pesach performed in Israel like it since the days of Shemuel the prophet, and none of the sovereigns of Israel had performed such a Pesach as Yoshiyahu performed, with the priests and the Levites and all Yehuda and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Yerushalayim. In the 18th year of the reign of Yoshiyahu, this Pesach was performed. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th day of this new moon, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the beings, according to each man's need. You make your count for the lamb. Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year old. Take it from the sheep or the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same new moon. Then all the children of the congregation of Israel, then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall slay it between the evenings. And so just wanted to tie that back to verse 30 of Exodus chapter 12 and verse 15, between the evenings. And they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it. Okay. Verse 20, after all of this, so all of this, right? He does this Pesach, he rebuilds the house of Yahuwah, he He gets the tithes in order. He's got all this giving done. And after all of this, when Yoshiyahu had prepared the house, Necho, sovereign of Mitzrayim, came up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Yoshiyahu went out against him. And he sent messengers to him, saying, "What have I to do with you, sovereign of Yehuda? I am not coming against you this day, but against the house with which I am fighting. For Elohim commanded me to make haste. Leave Elohim alone, who is with me, lest he destroy you." And this is another curious case of Yahuwah having... I mean, this is a capital E Elohim. So this is the Elohim talking to Necho, sovereign of Mitzrayim, who's battling Carchemish, which is not part of Israel. And then Yoshiyahu goes out against him, trying to back up Carchemish. And this guy says, "Look, God's got me doing this. This is the real God. This is your God. He's basically warning him, this is a test for you." I'm shaking this table, and that's why the camera's bumping. But he's basically warning Yoshiyahu, hey, this is a test for you. If you go out against me, then you're playing into the greed that Yahuwah is testing you against. However, Yoshiyahu would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself to fight against him, and did not listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of Elohim, and came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. And that's pretty well, yeah, I mean, like, I just want everybody to know that this is a sovereign of Mitzrayim who is giving a word of Elohim to the sovereign of Yehuda. I just want everybody to note that that's happening in 2 Chronicles 35 from verses 20 to 22. "And the archers shot at sovereign Yoshiyahu, and the sovereign said to his servants, 'Take me away, for I am severely wounded.' And his servants took him out of that chariot and put him in the second chariot that he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died and was buried in one of the burial sites of his fathers, and all Yehuda and Jerusalem were mourning for Yoshiyahu. Yirmiyahu lamented for Yoshiyahu, and to this day all the singing men and their singing women speak of Yoshiyahu and their lamentations, and made it a law in Yisrael, and see, they are written in the laments." We will do Lamentations at some point. I have not yet read Lamentations. I knew that it was written by Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu. I did not know that it was songs about Yoshiyahu. So I learned that today. Hopefully you guys learn a lot. I do learn a lot, but it kind of hits me as I go through it. And the rest of the acts of Yoshiyahu and his loving commitment according to what is written in the Torah of Yahuwah, and his acts from the first to the last, see, they are written in the book of the sovereigns of Israel and Yehuda. We're going to cut an intermission here. I'm going to refill my water. I'm going to run to the baño, which is Spanish for bathroom. Enjoy the wonderful view of my couch, or, allow the time to be for you to settle away from your phone screen for a minute and take a second. I'm also going to top off mi cafe, which I don't exactly need because by the time we finish this, it'll be like 7 o'clock. But that's okay. Oh, it's 6 o'clock now. We're in it, people. I love doing this with you guys, and I'm so grateful that you join me each day for this. Yeah. Thank you. All right, we're back. I don't take a full 15 minutes like this is an opera, but might as well be an opera because the performance here is great. Let's let a little bit of sunshine in. Get the air. It's also good to stretch the legs. Not one for sitting. Anybody who knows anything about me knows that I was a pizza maker for my entire life, which sounds like sounds like an indoor job where you're not doing anything, but you're very active from your arm muscles. Like, look at my forearms. There's not a good angle there. Pizza forearm. And you've been walking around, running around the restaurant all day. 2 Chronicles 36. And the people of the land took Yehoahaz, son of Yoshiahu, and set him up to reign in his father's place in Jerusalem. Yehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign in his father's. And he reigned 3 new moons in Jerusalem. All right, I did like a weird, that's me multitasking. That's my restaurantness. It's like there's a customer, the phone's ringing, I gotta open these pizza boxes, the pizza's burning in there, the chicken's down, and the fryer, and I got the salad to make with my pinky. So I was doing all that. Let me restart 36. And the people of the land took Yehoahaz, son of Yoshiahu, and set him up to reign in his father's place in Jerusalem. Yehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 new moons in Jerusalem. And the sovereign of Mitzrayim turned him aside in Jerusalem, and imposed on the land a levy of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And the sovereign of Mitzrayim made his brother Eliakim sovereign over Yehuda and Jerusalem, and changed his name to Yehoiakim. And Necho took Yehoahaz, his brother, and brought him to Mitzrayim. Yehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and he did evil in the eyes of YHWH Elohim. Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, came up against him and bound him in bronze shackles to take him away to Babel. And Nebuchadnezzar brought some of the utensils from the house of YHWH to Babel, and put them in his akal at Babel. And the rest of the acts of Yehoiakim, the abominations which he did, and what was found against him, see, they are written in the book of the sovereigns of Israel and Yehuda. Then Yehoiakim his son reigned in his place. Yehoiakim was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 new moons and 10 days. And he did evil in the eyes of YHWH. And at the turn of the year, sovereign Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babel with the valuable utensils from the house of YHWH, and made Sedekyahu, Yehoiakim's brother, sovereign over Yehuda and Jerusalem. Sedekyahu was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did evil in the eyes of YHWH his Elohim. He did not humble himself before Yirmiyahu the prophet, who spoke from the mouth of YHWH. And he also rebelled against sovereign Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by Elohim, but he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to YHWH Elohim of Israel. Also, all the heads of the priests and the people trespassed more and more, according to all the abominations of the nations, and they defiled the house of YHWH, which he had set apart in Jerusalem. And YHWH Elohim of their fathers sent to them by his messengers, rising up early and sending them, for he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they were mocking the messengers of Elohim, and despising his words, and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of YHWH arose against his people, until there was no healing. Therefore he brought against them the sovereign of the Kasdim, and he killed their young men with the sword in the house of their set-apart place, and had no compassion on young men or maiden, on the aged or the weak. He gave all into his hand. and all the utensils from the house of Elohim, great and small, and the treasures of the house of Elohim, and the treasures of the sovereign and of his leaders, all these he brought to Babel. And they burned the house of Elohim, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its valuable utensils. And those who escaped from the sword he exiled to Babel, where they became servants to him, and his sons until the reign of Persia, in order to fill the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Yirmiyahu, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. As long as she lay waste, she kept Sabbath, until 70 years were completed. And in the first year of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, in order to accomplish the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Yirmiyahu, Yahuwah stirred up the spirit of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, so that he called out all his reign, and also put it in writing, saying, Thus said Koresh, sovereign of Persia, Yahuwah, Elohim of the heavens, has given me all the reins of the earth, and he has commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Yehudah. Whoever is among you of all his people, Yahuwah his Elohim, be with him, and let him go up. And that is the end of 2 Chronicles. So, a lot going on there. I want to take a look back at the end of 2 Kings, because we do get a lot of 2 Kings 24 and 25 are just bangers as far as like the things Nebuchadnezzar does. Okay, I just wanted to check about it real quick. The other thing that I notice is that Yeshayahu, Isaiah is the prophet, and we don't get into Yirmiyahu. And so one of the things I've been trying to figure out is timeline overlap. And so Yeshayahu is named not long ago son of Amatz. Okay, so in Hezekiah, this is the last time we hear about Yeshayahu. And the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and his loving commitments, they are written in the vision of Yeshayahu, the prophet, son of Amatz, in the book of the sovereigns of Yehudah and Yisrael. So Yeshayahu is Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, and then Yirmiyahu is Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah. And so we get, chronologically it's Isaiah and Jeremiah, and there's got to be some overlap here. So I'm excited to read those and learn more about that. Because they also both experience Nebuchadnezzar, because 2 Kings Yeshayahu is the prophet. We're going to okay. So he's the prophet until Hezekiah, Uzziyahu, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. Let's see if we get the Hilkiyahu of the priests who were in Anoth, the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of Yahweh came in the days. Oh, we get the timeline. Of Yoshiahu, son of Ammon, sovereign of Yehuda, in the 13th year of the reign, and it came in the days of Jehoiakim, son of Yoshiahu, sovereign of Yehuda, till the end of the 11th year of Siddiqiyahu, son of Yoshiahu, sovereign of Yehuda, until the exile of Jerusalem in the 5th new moon. And does the exile start anywhere in here? Let's take it from the top of 36. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, son of Yoshiahu, and set him up to reign in his father's place. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 new moons in Jerusalem. The sovereign of Mitzrayim turned him aside in Jerusalem and imposed on the land a levy of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. So this is the sovereign of Mitzrayim, who I'm going to assume was Necho, made his brother Eliakim, the brother of Jehoahaz, sovereign of Yehuda and Jerusalem, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. And Necho took Jehoahaz, his brother, and took him and brought him to Mitzrayim. So basically, Yoshiahu in 35 goes out against Necho, which is obviously ordained by Elohim. As I pointed out, Necho fights him and takes over Judah and Jerusalem and starts imposing a tax on them, and then basically does the old CIA bait and switch where they raise up, they take out the leader and they raise up a guy in his place that does what they say. They take the offer that can't be refused, if you know what I mean. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and he did evil in the eyes of Yahweh his Elohim. Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, came up against him and bound him in bronze shackles to take him away to Babel. Nebuchadnezzar becomes the guy for Yahweh, and Nebuchadnezzar brought some of the utensils from the house of Yahweh to Babel and put them in his Hakal at Babel. He's like, that's cool, this is mine now. And the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and the abominations which he did, which God only knows. Or we could, and what was found against him, see, they are written in the book of the sovereigns of Israel and Yehuda, so we could just look there. Then Jehoiakim, his son, reigned in his place. Jehoiakim was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 new moons and 10 days. And he did evil in the eyes of Yahweh. And at the turn of the year, sovereign Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babel with the valuable utensils from the house of Yahweh, and made Siddiqiyahu, Jehoiakim's brother, sovereign over Yehuda and Jerusalem. Siddiqiyahu was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. All pretty straightforward with the valuable utensils from the house of Yahweh. This guy's just seeing gold and silver and just getting at it. And he did evil. Another king does evil. Siddiqiyahu, in the eyes of Yahweh his Elohim, he did not humble himself before Yirmiyahu, the prophet who spoke from the mouth of Yahweh. That's all you got to do is humble yourself. Say, bro, I can see that you are from God. And this is one of the worst things that Christians do. They're so prideful. They're so egotistical that they choose to not recognize the Spirit, which Yeshua says is the only unforgivable sin, is denial of the Holy Spirit. So somebody comes to them with the Spirit, they say, nah, F you. And there's been a lot of deceit and deception and scamming and trying to get people to, like, pyramid schemes, I guess you could say, especially in this technological era where people have been not befuddled but bamboozled by others and lied to, and so they are jaded against people just coming up and actually wanting to do them good. And so if somebody says something that's a little bit harder for them to believe, they're not likely to believe it, and then they get into the whole, having their best interests. And so people aren't as able to recognize the Spirit, also because they don't know the Word. So in keeping up in the Word and having the relationship with Elohim, you begin to develop wisdom and discernment of the Spirit and when it's moving and who has it and who's using it and who's following it and who's got another spirit that's not the Holy Spirit. And so did not humble himself before Yirmiyahu the prophet. And that's what ends up happening, is that these people can identify the Spirit, so they don't humble themselves when the truth is in front of them, and then they go F up harder, and Yahuwah gets pissed and smokes them. And he also rebelled against sovereign Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by Elohim, but he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to Yahuwah Elohim of Yisrael. Rebelling against Nebuchadnezzar. I'm like, maybe he tries to lead a coup or something. And also the heads of the priests. So, like, Yahuwah tells Yirmiyahu to tell Sadiq Yahu that he's going to capitulate to the will of Nebuchadnezzar, and he goes F Yahuwah and F Nebuchadnezzar, and so he tries to lead a rebellion, and then Nebuchadnezzar laughs at him, and Yahuwah goes, kill this guy. And also the heads of the priests and the people trespassed more and more, according to all the abominations of the nations, and they defiled the house of Yahuwah, which he had set up in Jerusalem. And Yahuwah Elohim of their fathers sent to them by his messengers, rising up early and sending them, for he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they were mocking the messengers of Elohim and despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of Yahuwah rose against his people, until there was no healing. Plague, famine, turmoil. What's the other thing that Solomon prays against? Scarcity of food, pestilence, blight. I'm looking in 2 Chronicles 6:28. And their enemies distress them in the land of their cities, any plague and any sickness. Whatever prayer, whatever supplication is made by anyone or by all your people, Yisrael, when each one knows his own plague and his own grief and spreads out his hands to the house, then hear from the heavens your dwelling place, and forgive and give to everyone according to all his ways, those whose heart you know, for you alone know the hearts of the sons of men, so that they fear you, to walk in your ways as long as they live in the land which you gave to our fathers. I mean, that says it right there. Therefore, he brought against them the sovereign of the Kasdim, and he killed their young men with the sword in the house of their set-apart place, the capital H house. So Kasdim come in and start slaughtering young men in the temple, and had no compassion on young men or maiden, on the aged or the weak. He gave all into his hand. And I just want all Christians out there, and all people also, to have 2 Chronicles 36:17 in mind when they form an opinion about Palestine and Israel. And don't tell me that Yahuwah won't condone that. 16 and 17. I'm going to just read it back. But they were mocking the messengers of Elohim and despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of Yahuwah arose against his people, until there was no healing. Therefore, he brought against them the sovereign of the Kasdim, and he killed their young men, and with the sword. Excuse me, that was not a proper he. The sovereign of the Chaldean killed their young men with the sword in the house of their set-apart place, and had no compassion on young men or maiden, on the aged or the weak. He gave all into his hand. 18. And all the utensils from the house of Elohim, great and small, and the treasures of the house of Yahuwah, and the treasures of the sovereign and of his leaders, all these he brought to Babel. And they burned the house of Elohim, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its valuable utensils. And those who escaped from the sword he exiled to Babel, where they became servants to him and his son until the reign of Persia, in order to fill the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Yirmiyahu, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. As long as she lay waste, she kept Sabbath, until 70 years were completed. So the land is just not being used. It's a wasteland, and it's getting to rest because they've been just beating and abusing the land and not letting it rest. 70 years, which has significance that I don't know right this second. And in the first year, 22, and in the first year of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, in order to accomplish the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Yirmiyahu, Yahuwah stirred up the spirit of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, so that he called out all his reign, and also put it in writing, saying, Thus said Koresh, sovereign of Persia, Yahuwah Elohim of the heavens has given me all the reins of the earth, and he has commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Yehuda. Whoever is among you of all his people, Yahuwah his Elohim be with him, and let him go up. So this is a word. From Koresh, saying, I'm ordained by Yahuwah. Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel 2, we have the statue where Nebuchadnezzar gets the sign. Daniel 2:14. Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the chief of the sovereign's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise ones of Babel. He answered and said to Arioch, the sovereign's officer, Why is the decree from the sovereign so urgent? So Arioch made the decision known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and asked the sovereign to give him time, and he would show the sovereign the interpretation. And Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, to seek compassion from the Elah of the heavens concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his compassion should not perish with the rest of the wise ones of Babel. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision, and Daniel blessed the Elah of the heavens. Daniel responded and said, Blessed be the name of Elah forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes sovereigns and raises up sovereigns. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who possess understanding. He reveals deep and secret matters. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O Elah of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the sovereign's matter. So Daniel went to Arioch, whom the sovereign had appointed to destroy the wise ones of Babel. He went and said this to him, Do not destroy the wise ones of Babel. Bring me in before the sovereign, and I shall show the interpretation to the sovereign. Then Arioch brought Daniel in a hurry before the sovereign, and said thus to him, I have found a man among the sons of the exile of Yehuda, who does make known to the sovereign the interpretation. The sovereign answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered before the sovereign and said, The secret which the sovereign is asking, the wise ones, the astrologers, the magicians, and the diviners are unable to show it to the sovereign. But there is an Elah in the heavens who reveals secrets, and he has made known to sovereign Nebuchadnezzar what is to be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O sovereign, on your bed your thoughts came up. What is going to take place after this? and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what shall be after this. As for me, this secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes who make known the interpretation to the sovereign, and that you should know the thoughts of your heart. You, O sovereign, were looking on and saw a great image. This great image, and its brightness excellent, was standing before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You were looking on until a stone was cut out without hands, and it smote the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff in the summer threshing floor, from the summer threshing floor. And the wind took them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled all the earth. This is the dream and its interpretation we declare before the sovereign. You, O sovereign, are a sovereign of sovereigns. For the Elah of the heavens has given you a reign, power and strength and preciousness, and wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them. You are the head of gold. And after you rises up another reign, lower than yours, and another third reign of bronze that rules over all the earth. And the fourth reign is as strong as iron, because iron crushes and shatters all. So like iron that breaks in pieces, it crushes and breaks all these. Yet as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the reign is to be divided. But some of the strength of the iron is to be in it, because you saw the iron mixed with muddy clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the reign is partly strong and partly brittle. And as you saw iron mixed with muddy clay, they are mixing themselves with the seed of men, but they are not clinging to each other, even as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these sovereigns, the Elah of the heavens shall set up a reign which shall never be destroyed, nor the reign pass on to other people. It crushes and puts to an end all these reigns, and it shall stand forever. Because you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great Elah has made known to the sovereign what shall be after this. And the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then sovereign Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did obeisance before Daniel, and gave orders to present to him an offering and incense. The sovereign answered Daniel and said, Truly your Elah is the Elah of Elohim, the master of sovereigns, and a revealer of secrets, since you were able to reveal this secret. Then the sovereign made Daniel great and gave him many gifts, and made him ruler over all the province of Babel, and chief of the nobles, over all the wise ones of Babel. And Daniel asked of the sovereign, and he said, Set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the work of the province of Babel, and Daniel on the gate of the sovereign. And so the reason that I read that was because the Persians are the silver. Nebuchadnezzar is the gold head, and the Medo-Persians are the silver. They take over next, which he's got prophecy of here. I just want to leave this because I'm actually going to do a part 2 for John tonight, because we're already an hour and 45 minutes in. There's 3 long chapters of Chronicles, and I just want people to be able to reach both videos, and not have to deal with the scrolling and stuff. So, well, or because Elohim told me to, whatever. Or because it's right in the eyes of Elohim. But what I want to reread is starting at 28. But there is an Elah in the heavens who reveals secrets, and he has made known to sovereign Nebuchadnezzar what is to be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O sovereign, on your bed your thoughts came up. What is going to take place after this? And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what shall be after this. As for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes, who might make known the interpretation to the sovereign, and that you should know the thoughts of your heart. You, O sovereign, were looking on and saw a great image. This great image and its brightness excellent was standing before you, and its form awesome. So, God knows all the secrets. Your dream, the visions of your head upon your bed, you thought. This is the thought that sparked the dream. If you're having dreams, put them down below. What is going to take place after this? And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what shall be after this. He who knows all, the living El. As for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living. But for our sake, who make known the interpretation to the sovereign. I am no smarter. I am no better than anyone else. I have prayed and pleaded to YHWH, my Elohim, that I be saved. And the way for me to be saved is to give you this interpretation, that you spare my life. In Yeshua's name, amen.